What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today I am still a bit croaky after the weekend casting Pokemon. I apologise, but I want to talk about Paramount War. Because, look, we know at this stage we can probably guess what's happening, right? Paramount War is starting to be hard to find. I've been showing you these stock updates from the official One Piece TCG stores in the UK, and I told you the other day, the point of this isn't to go, this is specifically what's in stock at this one store you may or may not be able to get to. That is not the point. The point was that sharing these stock updates with you basically gave you an overview of what stock is like generally. Because these are the people that are going to have the best stock. So obviously, everybody else is going to be kind of following them a little bit behind. So I thought it might be fun to have a look at Paramount War, because that is a set which is basically selling out everywhere. And we are seeing a bunch of price spikes, as you would expect, but it's not necessarily exactly in the way we would expect it. Now, another thing I've got to mention here, and this is extremely important, we know that there are going to be some reprints of older sets. That is confirmed, that is official, that is announced, etc. However, we don't know which sets and we don't know when. So, yes, it is absolutely possible that Op-02 Paramount War gets a big reprint. And if it gets a big reprint, obviously that is going to have a fairly large impact on prices. Alright? But we don't know when it's coming. We don't know how large it's going to be. And we don't know if it's actually going to be including Op-02. So yes, I acknowledge things could change and could change quite dramatically. But until we actually get proper confirmation of exactly what's happening and when, we need to save that as a hypothetical. Might be relevant, might impact a bunch of stuff, nothing we really need to be worrying about today. Excellent? Cool. So Paramount War then, what's going on? And we might as well start off with the Manga Rare, because that is obviously the big card in any set. And what we see with the Manga Rare is, it actually dropped down as low as like $550. Back in around about the beginning of October, we were sitting there at like a $550 card, which is expensive, don't get me wrong, but we're now the price is all over the place, but I'm putting it at around about a $1,200-ish card. Look at the last three sales, $1,300, $1,500, $1,100. So maybe it's a shade below $1,200, but not very far at all. This is around about a $1,200 card. It is very, very expensive. And here's the thing. It's going to take a lot to start bringing this down. It's not just the case that, it's a Manga Rare and it's A, so everybody loves it. Like I've said, we've seen us selling out of this set, and it might come back. But you've seen the pull rates of these Manga Rares. Even if the reprint does include Op-02, and even if it is quite substantial, do we believe it is going to be substantial enough to make a big difference in the price of this card? I'm not sure. Now, one of the cards that has really exploded in price and makes perfect sense is the alternate art Borsalino. And the reason, it's about a $120 card right now, okay? And you can go back to beginning of October, and it's about a $30 card. You'll notice October is where this all starts moving around. So, realistically, we can say that's probably where things started to get a little bit awkward. That's where stock started to get a little bit constrained, I think is a nice way to put it. And here's the thing. With Borsalino, we can look at this and go, it's busted. Like, Borsalino as a card is ridiculous. It's a blocker, but on your opponent's turn, it gains 1,000 power and cannot be KO'd by effects. So on your opponent's turn, you've got like a vanilla character, 4 cost, 6k, counter plus 1,000, as in you've got the stats of a vanilla character, but you've also then got this thing that you cannot be KO'd by effects, which basically forces your opponent to attack into your character and actually let you do the blocking, which is obviously ridiculous. And it sees a huge amount of play in a bunch of decks, including Sakazuki, which is, of course, by far the best deck around right now. That is, in the Op-05 meta, the best deck. Like, very clearly the best deck. So that kind of explains it. It's a set which is getting harder to find. It is a super duper duper playable card, and it's the best version of it. And you might be thinking, well, what about the regular Borsalino? That's not super cheap. Now, it was on release, it's like a $10 card. Even back in early October, you're talking a $12 card. It jumped up as high as $50. It's now rocking about $35. So I will say this has come down from its peak, but we're still talking about a $35 super rare. Bearing in mind, when you buy a box of like Op-02, you get 7 of the 10 super rares. In every box you buy, you have a 70% chance of pulling this card. And it's a $35 card on its own. Lovely that it's come down, but let's not pretend that the super rare is cheap at this point. It's not. Although the alt art is really getting there. The other card which is doing, well, actually there's a couple that are doing similar things. Like, for instance, Kazan. Kazan is another super rare. And it is currently about an $80 card. Back in early October, you're talking a $25 card. It's been as high as about $90. It's now rocking about $80. You could argue a little bit closer to $75, but it's still super expensive. And the message here is exactly the same as the message with Borsalino. It is a super rare. It is an alternate art of that super rare. And it is extremely playable. And that's largely the reason. And I love this art. It's one of my favourite artworks from Op-02. I think the artwork here is absolutely stunning. That is not the reason why this is jumping up. Kazan is a very playable card. On play, you draw a card, and when attacking, you -4 to one of your opponent's characters. Oh, look, it's another playable black card. Who could possibly have seen that coming? Very playable card, very good card. This explains it. But the regular of this is really not that expensive, and has actually been going down since about November. It's rocking like a $16 card right now. Now, to be fair, it's been as low as $4. So 16 is still, quadruple that. But this is not so high. And here's a weird thing. Borsalino is probably a better card than Kazan. So it would make sense that the regular would be more expensive than Kazan. And of course, we know that the alternate art Borsalino is about 50% more than Kazan, about 120 to 80. So the difference is a bit starker when you look at the regular versions. But make no mistake about it, they're playable cards that have jumped up in price. But the Kazan is actually falling a little bit. Now, the one that is really on the up right now is Nami. And if you look at the graph for Nami on TCG Player, which is of course where these graphs come from, you'll notice Nami's been proper job up and down. Jumped up to a $50 card, $55 card on release, went as low as $40. Jumped back up to $55, went back to about $40. It's now sitting at about a $70 card. And the reason is Uta. Right now, there is a lot, and you'll notice that whereas some of them have gone a little bit down lately, like general trending upwards, but in the past few weeks going down a little bit, here, this is very much up and up and up. And the reason is that Uta from Starter Deck 11, I showed you a couple of days ago that won Japan Nationals. So we all know this is a phenomenal card. And we all know it's a card which is going to see a lot of play in these decks like Uta. It's basically your generic searcher. This is what searches out your film cards. But of course, the whole point about Uta is it is a very film deck. Like the leader skill basically says, look at the top card of your deck once per turn when attacking Don X1. If it's a film card, draw it. Otherwise, it goes to the bottom of your deck. So you basically draw an extra card per turn as long as you're playing film cards, which you're blatantly going to. So yeah. Obviously, this Nami was going to jump up. Like, as soon as film got super popular and super playable, and it is only going to jump in popularity now that it's won Japan Nationals, this Nami, which is busted in that film deck, was always going to jump up. And we see the same thing here with the regular as well, incidentally. It's gone from, a $5 card on release. It's now sitting rocking a $35 card. Again, I want to remind you all, when you buy a box of Op-02, you have a 70% chance of drawing each super rare. So you've got a 70% chance of getting a Borsalino, 70% chance of getting a Nami. If you pull a Borsalino and a Nami, that's $70 right there in terms of cards. That's like 2/3 of your box paid for with just those 2 cards. And these aren't hits. Nobody's calling these hits. These are just regular super rares, which, you know, on release, they tend to be a lot of them are like $5 cards or less. That's kind of interesting. Now, the other film card which is seeing a lot of play is Monkey D. Luffy, and that's got an alternate art which is jumping up. When I say other film card, I mean other film card that has an alternate art. There's plenty of them in there that are seeing play, but they don't have alternate art, so they're just not going to jump in price, right? But the Luffy is. And the Luffy is a very cool card. It's a blocker, but when you play it, you get to play a Straw Hat of a cost of 4 or less from your hand, and we all know we cascade, so you generally play Brook, and then Brook lets you play a third card, which oftentimes is going to be Usopp. Just because it's a vanilla card, so it's got good stats, you're playing it for free, job's a good un. And the Luffy has actually jumped up to like a $60 card. Around Christmas time, it was a $30 card. And bearing in mind, this is an alternate art Luffy, right? Alternate art Luffy is always going to be a little bit popular because it's Luffy. But now that this film deck is actually legit and seeing a bunch of play and won Japan Nationals, all of a sudden this one is jumping as well. Now, at this point in the video, we could get into the alternate art leaders. And I'll mention them briefly, but look, you don't need me to tell you the alternate art leaders are going up. Obviously, the alternate art leaders are going up. And Op-02, I'm going to tell you right off the bat, the best leader, the only really playable leader in the set, at least at this point, you know, the only one that's really stood the test of time is Edward Newgate. And obviously that one's going up. There was a brief period of time where it got banned and everyone was like, hang on a second, maybe this is going to not be worth as much, but you'll notice that as soon as the ban got reversed, yeah, it's like a $160 card. The thing is, this one, it's an alternate art leader, and playability absolutely factors in. Newgate is the number one because it's the most playable. That is absolutely fair. But it's not all about playability. Take Smoker as an example. I don't think anyone is seriously suggesting that Smoker is a top leader. And look, I love Smoker. Smoker's one of my favourite One Piece characters. I like playing the Smoker deck, but no one's actually arguing that Smoker is top tier. And it wasn't winning all of these finals we had recently. And yet, it's been creeping up steadily, and right now, there are still some places where you can actually pick it up for about $100, but generally speaking, you're going more to like 120. Because it's an alt art leader. How about Garp? Garp is also like a $100 card. For Garp. And I know it says 113 on TCG Player, but, you know, last few sales, you've got 104, 102, 104. It's about a $100 card. But again, it's Monkey D. Garp. This is not a great leader. And look, I'm sure some of you are out there going, hang on a second, Wassy. You know what? At my locals the other day, Garp won. And yeah, I'm not saying it's absolute garbage unplayable. Most leaders you can build a deck around and have a decent tournament run. What I'm saying is no one's actually arguing that Monkey D. Garp is a great leader. Because it's not. And we have months worth of data to suggest that. All of the leaders are jumping up in price. I mean, the cheapest one we've got is Kinemon, which, yes, I know has had a couple finishes here and there, but it's not a particularly good leader, and it's not a particularly popular character. Like, who's a massive Kinemon fan? And yet that one's crept up from, you know, $25 in mid-October up to over up to about $70 now. But the alt art leaders, like, we could have seen this coming, okay? The alt art leaders jumping up in price, yeah. It's going to happen to every leader in every set. It's absolutely going to happen. Like, I pulled the Queen alternate art leader from Op-04. And right now, that is not a particularly expensive leader or a particularly sought after leader, to the point where there really isn't a huge amount of point in me, like, trying to even sell it. Like, right now, Queen is sitting nicely at like a $27 card. But you know what? At some point in the future, Op-04 is going to sell out. And we're not there yet. Op-04 seems to be the set with the best stock right now. But one day it's gonna. And when that happens, this queen, which I've got, which I have no real interest in selling right now because I love the alternate art leaders, especially the ones from OP-04. No way I'm selling one for $25. It's going to be a point in the future, I don't know exactly when, but there is going to come a point where all of a sudden, this becomes good. And everybody actually wants this card because OP-04 is long sold out and the alternate art leaders are cool. So that was never really a question. But things like Nami, Borsalino, Kazan, they all make perfect sense. We can understand why they're jumping, but OP-02 is getting harder and harder to find, and these cards really are jumping quite nicely. That's the price spikes from OP-02. That's what you need to know. And now it's over to you guys. Tell me what you think about these cards. Tell me which ones you've picked up. Tell me what your OP-02 pulls were like. Tell me anything you want to tell me in the comment section. Go nuts! Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at Lawasi. That's where we talk One Piece and a bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, join a Discord, and all kinds of fun things. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching What's He Plays.